How do you think this card's been perceived by the North American MMA fan base?
Listen, let me be honest, it doesn't have quite the sexiness that some of the other ones here in Stockholm did. I don't think people in the United States are looking as forward to this one as they were the past cards in Sweden. And, you know, add in the fact that there's 2 events on one day, and it's certainly understandable. But, I mean, these are a necessary part of the growth of the UFC. You know, you see the number of fighters from the region that are fighting on this card, not to mention, you know, you've got some fun guys from Poland coming in, some Russians featured on the card as well. So, you know, I don't think it's got quite the big name appeal, but if you look at the matchups, I think there are going to be some fun fights, and it's opportunities for guys to step forward. I mean, let's not forget, it was, what, a year and a half ago, Conor McGregor was fighting his first fight, you know, right here in this very city, and look at where he's gone.
Well, I'm going to give you the honest take, because I read comments on our website. To be honest, there are quite a few people who are displeased. They would like to have seen some bigger names. But then there's tons of fans who are just happy that the UFC is coming here. So I'd say it's a little bit split. Some people were hoping to see something more along the lines of a first UFC Sweden card that mixed sort of Swedish fighters, but also some already well-established Swedish stars. But some are just happy for anything they can get.
But in general, most people are actually very sad that UFC didn't bring any big names. I mean, Gunnar Nelson is a huge name, but they believe that Rick's story is not on the same level. They think that Gunnar Nelson should have a bigger name. When Akira had the Korean Zombie, that was kind of one of the fights that would save the card, but when the Korean Zombie fell out, then the negativity just became more.
Well, in general, you know, I think people have called it pretty weak. Personally, although yeah, it does lack star power. I'm the kind of guy who I like to say I'm here for the fights, and you know, every time someone says a card's weak, it turns out to be awesome. But yeah, from a casual fan's point of view, and from a ticket seller point of view, it does lack star power, and I think that has been reflected in the ticket sales. I've heard they've only sold 50%, maybe it's gone up since, but you know, when you get here and you speak to some of the guys, they're all really excited and they're perfectly capable of putting on great fights, which is what you're here to see at the end of the day.
This is just kind of one of those in-between cards. It's not a bad card. It's just not one of those cards that's going to appeal to everybody around the world. But it's an opportunity for a lot of guys in this region to step up, turn in a good performance, and get bigger opportunities.
I was thinking about this, and do you think maybe the reason some of the fans here are a little bit underwhelmed is because there was a lot of talk all year long about this big stadium show with a potential fight between John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson, and then that didn't happen, but we got Gunnar Nelson versus Rick Story instead. So do you think that might have played on the psyche of a lot of fans here, maybe?
A little bit. I mean, I'll go right ahead and quote a former UFC employee who said, Swedish MMA fans are Gustafsson fans, not UFC fans. I know that a lot of fans were hoping to see Gustafsson fight. He is the biggest draw in Sweden. And I think people are, like you said, perhaps a little bit underwhelmed. But then, like I said, we have to stress the fact there are plenty of fans who are happy with the card as well.
That's true. I mean, I was one of the people. I think Alexander Gustafsson versus John Jones 2 should have been in Stockholm. I know it's all about the US pay-per-view market and all that business, but I think you got to have some bottle. You got to take these big fights overseas. Like, you get boxers fighting in their challengers country here and there, and it's big fights. And I think for a rivalry where you've got a rematch, potentially a saga, going to the other guy's country, it's what makes it greater. It's what makes it more memorable. And the Swedish fans behind Gustafsson, I think it would have been epic in the Globe Arena.
A lot of people in the States, when they said, look, man, they might do this stadium show, I saw a lot of people kind of scoffing and saying, oh, come on, man, they're not going to do a stadium. I believe they could do a 40,000 seat stadium show here and sell it out quick. I mean, there is passion for MMA here, and I think it's only growing. And again, a very, very knowledgeable fan base. You know, they know what they're watching. They cheer things that are on the ground. You know, it's not that it goes to the ground and you get a bunch of drunk idiots yelling, stand them up. I mean, they get what's going on, and obviously, of course, they stand behind Alex. So if that fight does happen in a stadium, I believe they can sell it out. I really do.
Someone in Vegas last week said to me that they were this close to making the stadium show here between Gustafsson and Jones. Apparently it was a lot closer than we ever were led to believe, and it was going to be in Gothenburg. And I think in the same, I think it's pretty much the equivalent of the World Youth the Youth World Cup happens in Gothenburg every year at the Gothia Cup. It's a massive stadium there, and that was the stadium that had pipped for it. So apparently that was a lot closer than we had actually ever imagined it was going to be.
Well, Gunnar Nelson, he's ranked number 12. This is his very first main event. He seems to be a little bit more media friendly, as we've both experienced today. What would a win over Rick Story do for him in terms of rankings in the welterweight division?
Huge, especially if he does it impressively. I mean, Rick Story is a guy that we all know and that we all respect, and everybody knows how tough and durable he is. It might be the kind of guy that plays right into Gunnar's strengths. You know, obviously he's going to be coming forward. Gunnar likes to counter. Obviously, Rick Story likes to take the fight to the ground. I think Gunnar will be more than happy with that.
I think if he wins against Rick Story, but one or two fights, no, 2 fights at least from title fight. Yeah. Because he's been 4-0, 4 or 3-0 in the UFC, and the hype is quite big around there. So I think 2 fights and then he's a title contender.
It could break him in there in terms of, you know, accumulating a win streak. I mean, Rick Story isn't in the top 10 himself, is he? But, you know, we know Rick Story is a real dangerous guy. And it's all about accumulating the wins is what I think can get you quite high, even if you're not fighting the high-up guys. And it's just exciting to see guys like Conor McGregor and Gunnar Nelson, who, although they're really highly touted with a lot of hype behind them, I like that every one of their fights is a step up. Especially them 2 guys. They have started from the bottom, and each fight has been a step up in competition.
I think the UFC are playing it not safe with Gunnar Nelson, but Gunnar Nelson isn't in any rush to do the Conor McGregor, his SBGI teammate, and say, I want this guy, I need this guy, I'm going straight to the top. Gunnar Nelson probably knows himself he's going to win the belt, and I think a lot of the people around him think that too. So it's kind of a slow progression for Gunnar Nelson, and in my opinion, I really like seeing it, because when it comes towards the time where he fights whoever the champion is at that stage, you have a back catalogue of footage.
Gunnar Nelson has a very hard style to deal with, and I think that Rick Story is one of the hardest guys to finish in the division and one of the toughest guys, but I do think that Nelson will emerge victorious, probably by decision.
Part of me thinks Gunnar will do the same as what he has been doing, but it is a step up, and you know Story can be dangerous. It's a real complicated one for me. You know, I think Gunnar's going to do the same as what he has done. I think a 2nd round stoppage. I think it won't be quite as dominant as what Damian Maia did to Rick Story, but I think he's going to blow him away, similar to what he has been doing.
I got to go with Gunnar Nelson, man. I really do. I think it's going to be a submission. I think, you know, it'll go back and forth on the feet a little bit, but I think eventually this thing's going to hit the ground. And I like Rick Story, man. He's a tough fighter, and I think he's going to make a better fighter. You know, the odds, I don't know if I'd say the odds are accurate. I mean, I do think it's a tougher fight maybe than most people are given credit for, but, man, I really do think Gunnar Nelson's the real deal. And I think this may be, you know, maybe not his full coming out party because it's on a, you know, Fight Pass card and maybe not getting a ton of attention, but I think this is going to be one of those ones that people stand up and take notice, and I think this might be the start of something big for Gunnar Nelson.